This meeting of the Somerville Planning Board for May 14th, 2025 will please come to order. Adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meeting Act has been provided. A copy of the notice specifying the date, time, and location was published in the Courier News, posted on the bulletin board outside of Borough Hall, posted to the municipal website, and given to the clerk administrator. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Roll call.
Andrea Dare is excused. Chris Addicks.
Here.
Art Akins is excused. Larry Cleveland. Here. Jason Kraska.
Here.
John Manilio is excused. Barry Van Horn is excused. Mayor Gallagher.
Here.
Councilmember Vroom.
Here.
Chairperson Warner is also excused.
Please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have the approval of the minutes from April 23rd.
Second.
Chris Addicks.
Yes.
Larry Cleveland.
Yes.
Jason Kraska.
Yes.
Mayor Gallagher.
Yes.
Councilmember Vroom.
Yes.
All right, there's no hearings or resolutions. We're moving into the ARB approvals. There's two of them for you guys to look at. Very basic signs. The committee looked at it. Just wanted to give you guys a view of it. No decision is needed here. So now we're going to go into pending business and discussion items. We're going to start with the affordable housing update. This is not the hearing for the affordable housing plan. That will be on May 28th at 6 p.m. here. Tonight's just going to be a quick overview to keep everybody in the loop, and pass it over to the mayor to kick it off.
Thank you. Yeah, as Jason said, this is an overview of kind of like an introduction to what the hearing will be at our next meeting. We have had a committee of folks for the last 8-9 months tackling this. And we're going to actually present this in 3 different sections. One will be the legal side of it. Chris Zangara, our redevelopment and affordable housing attorney, will talk a little bit about the legal side of the affordable housing component that all municipalities are required to do. Colin will talk about the process that we followed in order to achieve this. And then Mike Cole, our planner, will talk about the plan itself and what our requirements are and how we will comply with those requirements. The team that we had was comprised of, I think, a very good cross-section of the borough. It was comprised of 2 folks from council, Glenn Denis and Randy Pitts. Glenn is here tonight. We had 2 folks from the planning board, Lisa Werner and Jason Kraska, the chair and vice chair. We had Art Adair from the zoning board. We had our planner, excuse me, and we also had administration. We had Kevin Sluka from the borough, and then myself as well. Did I forget anybody? Oh, and Colin Driver. Well, I already said you were part of that, so. So that was kind of the team that kind of led this charge. And over the course of time, we've given updates to both the Borough Council and the Planning Board as well as we followed this process. It was an extremely lengthy and I'll say an extremely thorough process. Our goal was to develop a plan that was good for Somerville. The one-size-fits-all approach that some municipalities take, we didn't feel was the proper way to go. Over the course of the decades, there were previous affordable housing requirements, rounds 1, 2, and 3. The borough did not certify during those rounds because our position, the borough's position over those many decades, was that we complied with affordable housing based upon market standards. And obviously in the last 10 years or so, the market in Somerville has changed. And we have to adapt to that, and that's what this plan does. So it takes into account the responsibilities that the borough has undertaken over those decades, and incorporated that into our final plan. And Mike will talk about what our numbers were as provided by the state and then how we back our existing numbers into those numbers to come out with the final number. But I want to impress upon folks that this is a plan that's developed specifically for Somerville. This is a boots on the ground, identifying all that we have available to us, all that we have complied with up to this point, and we're creating what we think is a very creative approach to affordable housing in Somerville, and some unique things that we'd like to do as a part of this as well. So with that, Chris, I'm going to ask our counsel to come up. You just press the microphone button, the red button. You can sit. Yeah, just press the little button, the red light will come on. And Chris, just kind of give us who you are, where you're from, and then just an overview of, well, I'll call it the legalities.
Sure. It's good to be before the board. I haven't been before the entire board as a body, but I've met some of its members. It's good to be here. I'm a member of Reno and Coughlin Mancello. We serve as the borough's redevelopment council and also affordable housing council. I've been working closely with your team over the last few months. To give you just a rundown, anyone who's been in New Jersey knows the history, knows that Mount Laurel plays a large part in the way the urban fabric, the rural fabrics, the suburban fabric changes, moves. So prior to 2016, there was a executive branch body called COA, which was involved in reviewing housing elements and fair share plans to determine if municipalities were meeting their obligation to provide the municipalities fair share of the regional need for moderate and low-income housing. In 2016, the court said, COA is not the body that's going to review this. We're going to review this. We're stepping in. And in 2016, courts began reviewing housing element and fair share plans for those municipalities that wanted to come forward and submit them because they believed they had an affirmative obligation to create the zoning mechanisms, the opportunity for low and moderate housing. A lot of municipalities didn't submit those plans for judicial review because they believed they had the sufficient zoning mechanisms to create that opportunity. In 2024, Governor Murphy signed a bill to amend the structure. The Mount Laurel doctrine has been around since the 70s. It establishes there's a constitutional obligation on municipalities to zone and to provide opportunity. So the bill addressed that what has been a long-standing constitutional obligation, and rather than create a new executive branch or provide the opportunity for a new executive branch entity to review plans, the court said we're going to keep it in our court, but we're going to create a mediation forum that gives municipalities an opportunity to come forward, present their plan, work out any challenges to that plan, and during the course of that review process, provide municipalities immunity from builder-remedy lawsuits. So as long as you hit the timelines in the process of getting into and through that mediation forum, you'll receive immunity from builder-remedy lawsuits. The end goal of that mediation forum is to receive what's called a certificate of compliance. It is effectively it's what through the courts would be a judgment of compliance when imposed, saying, you know what, you've satisfied your constitutional obligation, you've satisfied your obligation to show that you can provide the zoning mechanisms for the 10-year housing period. The housing period that the borough is preparing for and that this housing element and fair share plan will address is the fourth round, 2025 to 2035. Just for where we have been over the last few months and where we're going, the bill sets out a number of timelines. The first major timeline was establishing, what's the number? How many prospective need units does the borough have to zone for? There are ways in which that number comes down, but what's the number we're discussing? And the DCA prepared a non-binding, excuse me. I live in the world of abbreviations and I forget that they don't travel with everyone. So the Department of Community Affairs was tasked with coming up with a non-binding calculation for every municipality. In some places they got that right, in some places they got that wrong, based on the data that they assessed. There was a determination that that the borough was satisfied with the calculation. Like many municipalities, it submitted through a resolution of council that determination that the prospective need obligation matched the DCA, and that was you had to submit that before January 31st. By February 28th, there was a challenge period by which entities could come forward, interested parties, and challenge the obligation. In the borough's case, no one came forward to challenge. By the end of March, you had a court order saying, we recognize your number. It provides for 74 prospective need units and 103 present need. Present is how many units do you have to rehabilitate over your 10-year period. Prospective is how many new units do you have to provide for, do you have to provide the zoning mechanisms to create the opportunity for. So now where are we going? By June 30th, the municipality has to submit its housing element and fair share plan that's been adopted by the planning board to the program. Any interested parties can submit challenges up through August 30th, August 31st. So after the challenge period closes, no further challenges can be filed. A developer, a nonprofit agency cannot come in and say, I don't agree with this plan because I have a better site. I have another site. A developer simply can't come forward for that reason. You have to address the specifics of the plan as presented by the municipality. If there are no challenges, then we should be able to move swiftly through the fall and obtain a determination that your housing element and fair share plan is appropriate. If there are challenges, we will work through the autumn, and by December 31st, 2025, the program's obligated to resolve all disputes. Whether it's December 31st or sometime in the autumn, once there is a housing element and fair share plan signed off by the mediation forum, the borough will have until March 2026 to adopt the ordinances and the resolutions that put into place those mechanisms from the housing element and fair share plan. So that's where we have been, and that's where we're going. And if
Great. I think that was a very concise synopsis from the legal side of it. Questions for Chris regarding the legal side of things? Okay. Chris, thank you very much. No, I know you're dealing with some
Yeah.
things, so.
I think we've
You can-
peppered you with enough questions over the last few months.
You're good. Thank you. So then next up is Colin to kind of talk through the process that we followed in order to get to this point where we're about a month and a half out from full compliance.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, well, Christopher actually covered a lot of my ground, which is really, really good. But we sent out to you, I believe it was last week, and to the council, that's the draft plan, and there's 2 draft ordinances, which Chris referred to. In fact, you've got one on the agenda tonight, which is the developer fee. It's an inclusionary ordinance. It covers the whole town. So the process was we met once a week since October. Every Thursday we met. Mike Cole and Christopher were charged with putting together these documents. And they have been through a number of iterations. Mike, if he had hair, would look like he does now. He's put a tremendous amount of effort and time into putting these documents together. And as the mayor said, the focus was what is good for Somerville, not what the boilerplate plan would look like. And I think it does that very well. There's some fine tuning that's still required, but I think we're going to meet the deadlines quite well. And on the 28th of this month, we're down to present to this board the whole plan. You can dig as deep as you want at that particular point in time, even though Mike knowing Mike, we've told him to be short, but it'll probably be an hour tonight as well. But I mean, and then Chris has also given the deadlines. We've targeted that the planning board will hear it in a public meeting on the 28th and refer it for, what do we call it? Endorsement by the council, because the council cannot pass this plan. It's a planning board plan. The resolutions that go with it, or the resolutions and ordinances, are council documents and actions that will take place. Following, we'll bring it to the council on the 16th of June, hoping that the council will endorse it. We've got 48 hours from that endorsement to get it into the Department of Community Affairs as an endorsed plan for housing and fair share. So again, I can't talk too much about the process because it was an iterative one and it was a weekly one, and we've been doing it since October. So on that, if you've got any questions, I'll try and answer them. But
Yeah, and maybe just a little bit of information on the developer ordinance that we have out there. So the concept behind the affordable housing really is developments that are 5 units and above.
correct.
So what the borough has done has actually encompassed all development. So those developers that come in with 4 units, or 3 units, or 2 units, those folks that want to convert to a 2-family, we have encompassed that in a developer fee ordinance, so that the way the committee looked at it and the recommendation we made, which was introduced at the council already, was that we're all in this. It's not just the larger scale developers. It's all development that goes on, except for residential.
Correct.
So if you're putting an addition on your home or rehabbing, the resident is excluded from this. So the idea is to capture, and so you say, well, how do you figure out, on a 3-family development, how do you figure out what that number is? Because it's a percentage, and that's exactly it. There's a value that is crafted. Who crafts that value? Who is it? DCA who crafts that value?
The value.
Of what
The
an
development fee
affordable
value.
unit is, so that we can assign that portion.
On the development fee, Mayor, it's the equalized assessed value. It's the tax
Thank you.
assessor who comes up with the number, and it's 2.5% or 1.5%, depending on what you're looking at.
Okay. So we're trying to capture that throughout the borough, so that we can fund this Affordable Housing Trust Fund correctly, so that we have the ability to create housing stock, whether it's new stock, rehabilitated stock, or inclusionary stock, or a combination of all, as a part of the fabric of the borough. And that was the intent. What we're not doing is looking at creating one unit to encompass all of our affordable units for a variety of reasons. I think the committee felt very strongly about that. Discussions with planning board members, we felt very strongly about that it needs to be woven into Somerville. And that's something that I think is extremely important to do, as opposed to just having one building, and then there's kind of a stigma to that. And the way I look at it is, I don't want kids going to school and having somebody say, "Oh, you're in that building." That's awful, and we're not going to let that happen.
Yeah, that's not kind of a stigma. It is.
It is, and I'm not going to let that happen.
Yeah,
I
no,
know this body won't let that happen, and neither will the council.
We're doing good.
So it's a matter of weaving this into our community. So that was it.
Thank you.
All right.
The only other question for you, Colin, this is all going to be available for the public on the website.
Once we do the public presentation to the planning board. The 3 documents that we're sort of discussing now will go on the web page the day after.
And there will also be what we call the short sheet, a very concise 2-page sheet that encompasses,
The details of,
yeah, it details, it takes 70-some-odd pages and condenses it down into 2 pages
Yeah.
of the most highlighted information from the report and how we are going to comply. And that's still being fine-tuned. Yeah.
Yep,
I do have a question. You had mentioned something about you have a 2-day turnaround?
48 hours from the endorsement by council.
Okay, and that's enough time? And it's also legally enough time? You don't have
It's
2 days?
mandated time.
Okay, fine, just 2
Yeah.
days.
No,
seems
it's
like a
mandated.
tight-
Chris's problem to make it happen in 2 days.
Yeah, the planning board will adopt it.
We have to have a special meeting for that?
That's happening at our,
The 28th. The next meeting will be,
Next meeting.
Presentation and adoption?
correct,
Oh,
yeah.
And it's been advertised, Larry.
you know, I'm just
Yeah, no.
curious about, if it's that short a time, do we have the time? If we have to have a special meeting,
Well, what's,
we gotta think about that now.
yeah, the way we built it in, we built a little fudge factor room in there.
Yeah.
So May 28th is the adoption. At the first meeting of the council, June 6th, I think.
Yep.
June 6th,
June 2.
June 2. The council will concur, or they'll vote on whether they want to concur or not, but it really is the planning board's document. And we've, now, June 2 is the public
so,
Well, the
presentation.
16th is when the
Is the-
council
Yes.
would endorse it.
Yeah.
yes, 16th.
Well, if I
So-
may, Mayor, just let me continue. We sent these documents out to all boards, you and the council. Read them. If you've
Yes.
got questions, when we come back in 2 weeks, that's the time to.
I was just looking
Later.
at the timeline.
So,
Yeah.
so the theory behind it is to give both bodies 2 meetings to have a review of it. That was the goal behind it. So we've left 2 weeks of a flex factor at the back end between the 16th and the 30th. So that gives us 2 weeks in case there is an issue, we can fast track something.
Yep.
But we're not anticipating that happening, we're
We're
pretty
we're looking
comfortable.
at the 19th, Mayor, to have the council review it in public, but not a public presentation.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and just so, just so the board's clear, will be, we have an open docket, case docket, which is used to submit documents. So there's already an open case. It's the mechanism by which documents are being filed. So it's it's in that 48 hours, it's a simple upload, and we'll be taking any action we need to after the planning board adopts to, alert the program that action's been taken and that there's going to be further action when there's been an endorsement.
Well, just before we give it to Mike, Chris has passed the comments, and their law firm is handling quite a few municipality boards and their plans. We have stuck to the timeline and exceeded some of the state requirements, times, better than any other municipality. And a lot of it's to do with Christopher and Mike getting the stuff done. I mean, we're looking at, I'm holding over 100 pages of paper here, and that doesn't come easy. And meeting with the team once a week, it adds work to it because everyone has their own opinion on what should be said. So we've had to filter this stuff through. And I think when you read it, you'll see that while it's in planning and legal language, it's very thorough, and it explains what we want to do as a borough for the next 10 years.
Good.
That's about all I can say, Mayor, really.
All right, so now we'll head on over to Mike to kind of detail broadly what this document says.
Thanks, Mayor. It's the bird's eye view.
You may want to shift over one, Mike, because you're
sorry.
getting blocked out by, that's better.
Thanks, Mayor. The bird's eye view of this is that everything was redone for this fourth round of affordable housing. The housing element was redone from 19 using the most up-to-date data, and that's what the planning board will be voting on as part of the master plan at the next meeting. So you have the housing element redone and the fair share plan, which reflects Somerville. This is specific to Somerville only, being the uniqueness of the community. So what you have here is what the mayor said, and it was briefed by Chris and Colin, that you have inclusionary development throughout this document, being that the borough doesn't really know where development's going to be. We think we have an idea, but we can saying that everyone's being treated equal in this process, being the development fee ordinance applies across the board. It doesn't, the downtown or PRO, it doesn't do that. And the inclusionary ordinance also is equitable across all boards. So it's the town is being treated as a whole, as opposed to different pieces, which some communities do, saying this zone. The community, this plan addresses the community as a whole. And it was custom, given the housing stock, like there was a windshield survey done, it was a program, but basically says that the present need of the rehab component was custom to what exactly is going on in Somerville. And then the prospective need, which is the obligation for future development on the next 10 years, that was fine-tuned for what's happening within the borough, giving the senior building and other things, assets the borough already has, to come up with a plan that reflects those assets. So if you go through the affordable housing documents from round 1, 2, and 3, and what Chris and Colin had mentioned, and the new statute that was signed last year, you have multiple layers, and this is really a fabric of weaving it all together that come up. It's not one size fits all. There's a lot of ways to addressing affordable housing. So the trick was to get through all this, to come up with a clear plan that's simple to understand, that fits Somerville's needs. And that's what I hope this plan does, being that is, from an affordable housing standpoint, and it can be legalese and planner language and these terms, we hear these terms, present need. Yeah, present need, all we're saying is the rehab. We have to rehab existing stock. So we're trying to rehab to make sure housing which needs some attention gets attention. And then this prospective need is nothing more than saying future obligation, trying to incorporate affordable housing in the next decade in the borough. That's what we're trying to do. So we're just trying to plan for any developments in the future that it has the affordability component is being achieved, which, as Chris had mentioned, is the constitutional obligation. And as the mayor said, that in the past, the borough has felt strongly that under free market forces, the borough was affordable. But things have changed. The borough is very attractive from a real estate point of view, and this plan would address the affordability based on the new statute. So we can go into detail, but I figured I'd save that for the 28th meeting. But if you look at the plan, you'll see the common theme: inclusionary, no 100% affordable housing, inclusionary, every development to address this. Development fee ordinance is the same thing, that if you're commercial, if you're doing apartments, residential, not the single family or the two family, we're talking 3, 4, 5 developments, dwelling units, that would be addressed. They would have to pay into the trust fund so the borough can implement the rehab program and the affordable housing. So in a nutshell, that's what, 150 pages here. And
Mike, I've never heard you condense that well.
Yeah.
well, we can go into the weeds on this, but I think we shouldn't lose point of the grand picture here is the borough. I've reviewed a lot of these plans. I'm sure Chris and Colin have too. And the uniqueness is it's borough-wide. I don't know any municipality that does this approach borough-wise. They have zones. We're going to do all the affordable housing in the redevelopment zones, downtown, over here, whatever. That's not the approach here at all. The approach is uniform. And I think it's a very simple approach that it's hard to argue why not the micro. And the same thing with the development fee ordinance. I think it protects the residents, the homeowners, and ensures that the fair share, the fees are being encumbered as dictated by the statute. So, yeah, Mayor, I can go into quite a lot of detail.
Well, and I think we will at
Well, I think at the next one, if I may, yeah, because we looked at what is the number moving forward. We've got a decade to meet an obligation. What is that obligation? And the team felt that you can't put a number on it because we can't estimate what's going to happen in 3 years or 5 years out. Therefore, making it all inclusionary seemed to be the most logical way of doing it, and then putting it into a document that anyone could look at and say, this is what we have to do, takes the anguish out of trying to meet a number which may or may not be realistic. And I think this does it, and we'll let Mike get into the weeds on the 28th on that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think, you know, what will happen is, Mike, I'm sure will bring us through base demographics, practical application of what we currently have on the ground, borough-wide, what the recommendations are from community affairs as to what our numbers in the state's eyes should be, laying over the top of that those developments that already comply, which have an effect on that number that the state has, and out at the back end comes our number, our final number, and then from that, how do we apply future development to meet those goals? And that's really, what we're trying to do is to make it simple for everybody to understand, because it can get very complex. And I think one of the things that we've tried to do is to allow flexibility in the plan, because that flexibility creates, it provides for creativity. And the one size, as I started with, the one size fits all doesn't work, especially in Somerville. We're a very unique community. And we want to provide the opportunity for both the planning board and councils, the existing ones and future ones, the ability to have that flexibility and adapt to what the markets are at that time. So some of that flexibility may be creating tiny homes.
Knew that was coming out.
So one of the things that, they're tired of me talking about it, is what I call incubator housing. And it's crafting housing. The hospital has something very similar, and they call it healing homes. And it's allowing somebody to live rent-free for a couple of years till they can get on their feet financially, and then they can go out and provide for themselves. And if we have the ability to do that, to me, that's really what, I really like that idea. I love the idea of giving that person a hand up, and allowing them to get their financial feet under them, and then they can flourish on their own. That, to me, that's what we should be doing. But there's other elements to it, which we'll walk through at the next meeting, but those are the types of creative areas that we're thinking about. Glenn, anything you want to add to the mix here? Yeah.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate I am not from the planning perspective. I have my master's in environmental science, but that's very limited in the planning. And being able to see these things and what these gentlemen have done and put together, and the questions that the group brought, has really enlightened me and made it a much clearer process. And I hope that we can impart that upon the public and make sure that they can see how really adaptable it is. The way I've looked at it is it's a lot like a map, but instead of having just the one destination that we've chosen and it makes us go that way, we have multiple ways, multiple pathways to get there. And I think that that's going to be the most valuable for our Somerville, because it has that structure but that adaptability.
Great. Good closing comments. Anybody, questions?
One question. The timeline to meet our obligation, that's over the 10-year time period. I
Correct.
think some people have it in their heads that we have to all of a sudden generate 140
No.
units now, and it's not, that's not the case at all. This is over time.
You know, you bring up a great point, Larry, because people's perceptions of affordable housing are very, they're all over the place. You know, I've heard people say, well, affordable housing is just that it needs to be built immediately and we have to have, you know, X number of units tomorrow. I've heard, you know, other folks say, well, affordable housing means I can live rent-free. Or I can live for $500 a month in a unit. It doesn't happen that way. You know, it's calculations, it's median incomes, there's a whole host of formulas that enter this, which we'll walk through. And actually, that short sheet will actually answer a lot of those questions that people have. And
That'll help dispel.
very much, very much. But, you know, it's a great question, because you're right. That's everybody's perception of, I think people will be very surprised at what affordable, the valuation of what affordable housing is. So if you're in an economic bracket that's here, you know, at either low, moderate, I think the numbers will surprise people. They really will.
Yeah, Somerset County.
It's a wealthier county.
Yes.
Yeah,
And these are numbers that we're not setting. These are numbers that are set for us.
that's correct. Yeah, great point, Glenn.
Yes.
Great point. Other questions?
Just one more. We're gonna have a copy of the plan available to the public for our meeting, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
Yeah.
'Cause that we definitely have to have, and just wanna make sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everyone to look at the current housing element versus this one. The change is amazing in the last 6 or 7 years in the borough, from many different
You're talking about
avenues.
demographics.
Demographics are amazing. And just working in the borough for 20 years, doing the windshield survey, the housing stock.
Explain what a windshield survey is.
A windshield survey is, there's a mechanism in the regulations that allow to look at housing condition from the street, looking at 3 sides as opposed to going in the house. The slang is called the windshield survey. Even the regulations, it refers to as the quote windshield survey. And it's amazing if you drive down all the streets and do this survey. I haven't seen the borough ever look this good in 20 years. The borough you have a very hard time finding challenging properties. Very hard.
There are a few.
There's a few, but the town is really, it's always looked great, but my personal opinion, I've never seen it better in 20 years. It's always looked good. People take pride, but when you do the windshield survey, it really has self-reflection of, wow, what's going on here? It's just a wonderful thing.
So the only other recommendation, and Colin had stated it before, if everybody hasn't had a chance to read the plan yet, please read it. If you do have questions, send them in to Ryan, and he will get them to our professionals so that they have time to identify what those responses are, so that the questions aren't, you know, the high-level questions, not a problem, but if there's detailed questions that need to be asked, please get those questions to them so that they have time to prepare those responses.
Because it is a tight deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you wait until you come to the meeting on the 28th and bombard everybody, then
Yeah.
you'll be called to special meetings.
Yeah. Yes, and you will have to come. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. I think a phenomenal job by everybody.
Thank you.
Phenomenal.
Right. Which is a great segue into the next item, which is the ordinance 2764. That's the land use fees that everybody was talking about multiple times. Basically, it establishes what the fees are going to be for who, when, where. This is our making a recommendation back up to council for it, for them to approve it. It won't go into effect until after the plan is adopted, but we need to get that to council. Mike, anything?
It's development fee, or kind of beating this one up, but basically it lays the groundwork, and it was thought to get that in place is another key to the puzzle, and that's the 2.5% equalized. That's the value of what's going to fund the trust fund for developments in the future that have less than 5 dwelling units. So the 2, 3, 4, 5 that are not owner residential, that are exempt, would pay into the trust fund.
Perfect.
Any questions on that?
Make a motion to refer it up in the positive to council.
Do I have a second?
Second, sorry.
Chris Edix,
Yes.
Larry Cleveland,
Yes,
Jason Kraska,
Yes.
Mayor Gallagher.
Yes.
Councilmember Frome.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next item is basement apartments. This is gonna be something we're gonna be coming up in discussions with shortly. Kinda let, Brian, Mayor, you wanna?
Yeah, and I think it's really, it's getting people to begin thinking about this. We're beginning to see some interest from property owners regarding rental units in basements and converting basements into habitable dwellings. I'm not so sure that's a good idea. I know from a safety standpoint, the Board of Engineers would probably come back with a recommendation that the fire official, probably the same attitude. But I think it's something that we need to put on our radar and begin to talk about. As applications may be coming in, we need to get ahead of that and understand what the implications are, not just for our emergency personnel, but for the folks who might live in one of these basement dwellings. I can tell you, when we've had issues in town, there are some illegal basement dwellings in and around town. Typically, it's our police department or fire department that will stumble across them during an issue in that home, and they're dealt with very quickly. And I think we may need to address that in the near term.
are we gonna be looking at, topographical maps with flooding issues? Because back 2, 3 years ago in New York City, they had several apartments that were basement apartments and they got flooded and people drowned in their apartment. I know that didn't happen here.
You know what, Larry,
but
it's not something that didn't even cross my mind, but you bring up a great point. A great
It
point.
could be maybe, no, you can't do that here, because,
I-
no.
I-
Yeah,
Yeah. I think
Common
that's-
sense.
well, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I think that's a great comment. Great comment.
So we
Yeah.
can look at that.
We can look at it, I think there's
Ceiling heights,
ceiling heights, accessibility, whether we even
Egress.
want it or not.
Yeah.
Even if there is egress, underground apartments, is that something that the borough wants? That's something that this body should make a recommendation to the borough council on.
and we can research other towns that might be allowing it to figure out what they're doing.
Yeah.
Or
Mike,
the
can you-
towns of
Allowing
like-
or not allowing?
Yeah.
Yeah, or of.
Yeah,
You can do this in Patterson, but maybe they don't do this in Cranford,
Right.
just saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it'd be prudent for the planning board to look at what the construction codes say is allowed. If the construction codes have put great restrictions on it, they should be aware of that to incorporate that into whatever.
Can you put together a synopsis of that?
Yes.
Both from the construction code side and then to Larry's point about, the different issues that might affect
Yeah.
basement dwelling units,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Proximity to the Petersbrook,
flood zones.
yes.
Yeah, it's a good point.
All right, the redevelopment plans, master plan zoning, we're obviously a smaller board tonight. Some people had some absences. So we will push that to the next meeting, as well as the improvement coverage subcommittee. They're not present tonight, so that'll be difficult to discuss. EV charging stations, Mike, have we gone anywhere with that?
Yes, I'm meeting with the fire marshal tomorrow, who's reached out to Red One, which is slang for Joe Stitley, who is to get comments from the Board of Engineers to look to tweak, make recommendations to the planning board, and should the planning board agree with them, those recommendations to go to council to amend the current EV ordinance to address some of the potential life safety issues. So I'm hopefully going to get some guidance from both Board of Engineers and the Fire Marshal tomorrow, and then I will be drafting something for the planning board for maybe the next meeting, depending on how the housing element goes, to kick around.
Just so you know, I had a conversation with an electrical contractor here in town, one of the larger ones, and they actually had offered to come in to talk to the board about EV charging. And, you know, its positives, what some of the detriments might be, what some of the perceived detriments are.
Yeah.
And they can bring in, EV charging folks as well. I think the manufacturers of some of these EV charging, to talk about them, if that's something that the board would like.
Just so the board is unaware, the DCA appears have given latitude for site safety to amend the ordinance to reflect site safety issues, sighting issues, sight lines, bollards, stuff like that. So is what it's going to be upcoming, whether the borough should amend the ordinance to reflect site specifics, decks, impairments, where exactly these charges should go.
Good.
All right, nobody has anything else on those? Moving on, I have no comments tonight, so we will now open the meeting to the public. Hearing none, we will move on. Any other comments, anything from the board? Mayor? Anybody? All right, then I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.